In the last video, we saw an overview of Attio and we created our first contact. And before the end of that particular video, we went ahead and synced our email with our Attio workspace, right? Which is ACS YouTube. When we did that, if you remember, we went as far as creating a contact, and I'm going to search out for that contact, which happens to be Isaiah. And this is the contact. However, if you take a look at the people section this time around, we have a couple of them. Remember, we synced our email with the workspace, so it's kind of got the details of our previously contacted clients from Gmail and then populated the people's feed. And that is why we have a list of contact right here on the people section. Now, if we take a close look at companies, let's see if we'll have a couple of companies based on the ones we've reached out to in the past with our email address. So quite before, it was just about 10 organizations, I'll say 10 companies, which was the default. But due to communication with these other domains or companies, Attio already populated them for us based on what we have on our Gmail. Now that is that. So by default, Attio gives us a couple of records. It's called records, but in theory, it's objects, right? And we'll be looking more about that. But before then, let me quickly show you the list of records that by default is in Attio. So at first, we have companies and people enabled, and they're shown right here. Now for us to see the other ones, we have to click on this icon, which is to create new object, which we are going to be doing in the coming section. So at first, we click on it, and then we'll see the default objects that are created, that are standards, and basically they are activated. So right now, companies is activated, people object is also activated. Now we can go ahead and activate these users and workspace, but I'll keep it very simple for now. So we are only going to activate user, and then we are going to activate, I'll go back, right? And then we are going to activate deals. So based on how Attio has been structured, right now there are no records, but then we have no records too for users, but we have a couple of attributes, and I'm going to be explaining these attributes in details when we get to the object sections. So for companies, we have about 34 attributes, for these 11, and so on and so forth for the other ones. So when we move back to normal dashboard, now the record of these and user are going to show. Now you can also deactivate this standard object by clicking on exit, and you go as far as deactivating the object. So that is how you deactivate the object. So moving back now, we can clearly see how Attio gives us standard object, and these objects are standard in most CRMs. But the beauty of Attio is that it gives us the ability to go as far as creating new custom objects in any fashion we prefer, right? And so for a start, we are going to be creating a custom object. So we firstly have to click on new custom object, and then we specify the name of the object. Now, what I'm going to do is call this object video, okay? And the video, and this other section is a plural of it, so we're going to have videos, and the singular should be video. I didn't spell that correctly, pardon me. And then we go and create this object. So I'm just assuming ACS YouTube channel have a couple of videos, right? And right now we want to keep track of how many videos we're posting a week, and some other attributes to this video, like the comments and how many likes. There are a couple of attributes we are going to take into consideration, right? So by default, ACS Attio, is going to create a slug for us, an identifier, more like an endpoint. So when we get our API key, we can query our endpoint and get more details regarding a particular object or record in our workspace. So right now we move on to the attributes section. And by default, we are going to have a couple of attributes, right, that have been added to this custom object that we created. One of them is the created, that is it's of type timestamp, and the next is created by, and it's the user that has created it, so it's tied to that user, because in the workspace there are going to be more than, you might have multiple users based on the amount of persons or the number of persons in the team or in the organization. And we have next due tags, and yeah, these are pretty much what you can use to copy the slug or even copy the ID. Now, the slug is very important. We are going to be looking at the usage of the slug when we get to the section where we have to deal with API calls. Now, a record ID is of type test, and we have list entries, which is of type record. Next due task is also of type record, because I believe task itself is a record created as a timestamp and created by its user. Now we can go ahead and create other attributes for this particular object, and to do that we click on create attribute, and very first thing that we know most of our videos have would be title, right? So I'm gonna call this attribute title. Now it's very important here that we follow a pattern that has already been followed by default by Attio. Now you on your own, you can come up with a naming pattern or a naming convention you use for most of the objects you will created, but I'm going to follow the traditional convention that Attio already gives us. And when I say naming condition, I'm going to discard this at first, so we can see that the name of every attribute start with a capital letter. Right, so we have a space in between to make it very easy for us for reading. But next due tags is the name of the feed, but the slug will pretty much be different. So I'm going to copy the slug now, and I'm going to move right through this bar right here and paste it, and we can see that it's named in the way that we have underscores in between, right? It doesn't take a camel casing conversion. However, when we go ahead and want to create our own attributes, let's take for example the title, right? And we give description is optional. I will simply say title of the video, just to keep things very simple. And for every video, this is a required feed, so we're going to click on required. You can have a video with different names. So for the unique feed, which is the constraint we're adding to this particular attribute, we leave it as unchecked, right? So right now we have to specify the attribute type. Now remember back when we looked at the default attributes that comes with any custom object we created, we saw that we have records, we have a type of timestamp, we also have test. Now this is how you select the type that you associate to an attribute that you are adding to your custom object. So right now we can use the AI autofill to autofill things for us, to autofill our feed, but then again we want to do it on our own manually, right? So we have a couple of right here. We have test number, checkbox state, rating, timestamp, select, multi-select, currency, record, user, status, relationship, location, and phone number. And in this scenario, what fits well with the title is a test. So we go ahead with the test, and we can simply click on create attribute. So now we have one attribute. Now you can go ahead and create multiple attributes as you see fit for whatever custom object you create. We'll go one step further, and every video in the pipeline has on YouTube has a series of stage. We have the first stage, which happens to be the unpublished state, and we have the next stage, which is the published state. We also have the pending, I'll put it that way. And for this scenario, we can use a new attribute and we give it a status feed, right? And I'm gonna call this video stage, or you can see video stage, right? Let's call it video stage, the current stage of the video. All right, it might be private, it might be public, it might be pending, it might be unpublished, you know what I mean. And on the statuses, we are going to create a couple of status, you see, because we have to select one option from the status. So right now we are simply going to have the first one, which is simply pending. I'll add another one, published, unpublished. We'll have private. So here, that's enough. I'll delete this item and I'll simply set it as it. Now by default, we will have one stage, and we can say every video on our channel should have a default of private, right? So let it have a default of private, and it can be required, but it shouldn't be unique because you're going to have multiple videos that lapses across each other. And so that is that. Or the status, it can be required. Sorry, for the status, it shouldn't be, it can be required or not, but we have a default value already. Either way, it's going to be attached to every new video object or record that we create. So simply create this attribute, and right now we have it. Now we've touched two of the different types that we have when it comes to creating of an object. We say when it comes to text or strings, we simply make use of text, and when we are looking at a possibility of values that is being defined, take for instance in the case of the video status, we have just 4 possibilities, right? Take gender for example, we have a couple of possibilities, and the well-known is male and female, and so that is how it works with status as well. So right now for status, we have a couple of them. Now the next one we're going to be looking at is for every video we have a list of comments, right? Comments in this case can be a new object. We can go ahead and create that object, but I'll keep things very, very simple for our current state and workflow. I won't go with comments. What I want to go with now is likes. So I'll simply go now and create another attribute. So this should be called likes. Likes, terms of the, or we can say the number of reactions gotten by the video, right? And I'll call it likes. We can call it reactions, right? And let's just call it reactions because sometimes some videos are liked and other times they are unliked. We have a thumbs up and we also have a thumbs down, so we call it reaction. And you see in this scenario we can also make use of a status. So let's see. Okay, for us to do that, reaction on its own would be an object, right? So we don't want that. We just want to keep things very simple, so we are going to go with like alone. And for the attributes type, we are looking at the number of likes, so we are simply going to make use of number as the type. So by default the value would be 0, and yeah, that is it. So we simply go ahead and create our attribute. So I just want to keep things simple, and this is enough for this section. Now we've seen how to create custom object. We've seen the default object that is created by Attio when we create our account, and we've seen how to activate this object, and even how to go as far as deactivating this object. Now if I'm to go back, we'll see that we now have a type attached to this new video object that we've created, which is called custom, because it's a custom object that we went ahead and create. And we can see that right now we have no records attached to a couple of these objects right here. These users and videos simply have no records attached, and that is where record differs a bit from object. Now record is an instance of an object. Okay, the object is like a template, and the record is an instance that was created out of that object template, right? So that is it, and that is the explanation. I hope you got everything clear, and until the next one, keep being your best self. Goodbye.